I was 10 years old when my dad's job transferred him to a small town about 5 hours from where we used to live. He worked for a company that owned and operated industrial plants scattered around the state. And as part of his relocation package, we were given a medium sized family home and a company vehicle. It wasn't anything fancy, but the house was decent, livable, and functional. The neighborhood was quiet, rural, more than urban. The kind of place where you saw more fields and patches of brush than stores or streetlights. I was an only child, and at first I dreaded the move. The street we moved onto had no other kids around, except one. A boy about my age lived just a few houses down. For privacy's sake, I'll call him Sam. Coincidentally, Sam's dad worked at the same plant as mine. His family had already been living in that town for years, so Sam knew everyone and everything about the area. We became best friends almost immediately. Being the only two kids on the street and then finding out we were in the same class at school sealed it. Sam was a natural outdoors kid. He spent all his time outside. He was never inside unless it was nighttime or dinner. That rubbed off on me, and soon enough, most of my days were spent with him, roaming around town or finding new places to explore. That first summer in town was the most fun I'd ever had. Every morning, I'd wake up, eat breakfast, and head straight to Sam's house. We'd grab our bikes and disappear for the entire day, down to the river, out into the woods, or even poking around in old machinery and abandoned spots we weren't supposed to be in. Our parents didn't worry too much. It was a small town, the kind of place where word traveled fast and people knew each other's kids. Besides, we usually stuck to the same routine: bike to the river, hang out with other kids, and head home before dark. But one day that summer was different. It was a warm afternoon when Sam and I rode our bikes about 2 or 3 miles down the road to the river. A few other kids were already there, swimming, splashing, daring each other to jump off rocks. The river was one of the main gathering spots during summer, so it wasn't unusual to find a half dozen kids hanging around. We spent hours there doing all the usual things: swimming, skipping rocks, telling stories, and exploring little bends along the riverbank. By around 5 in the evening, the other kids started heading home. But Sam and I decided we wanted to stay a little longer and watch the sunset from a hill he knew that overlooked the valley. Sam was always pointing out new shortcuts, trails, and hidden spots, so I followed his lead without question. We carried our bikes up the hill and sat down, facing the valley below. The view was stunning. Rolling hills stretching out under an orange sky that looked like a painting. We sat there talking, telling creepy stories to pass the time, and just soaking in the view. That's when we heard it. At first, it was faint, almost like the wind carrying a distant hum. Then it became clearer, almost like chanting, low, rhythmic voices echoing in the distance. Sam frowned. "That's weird," he said. "There's no church out here, just old houses and some abandoned buildings." He tried to make a joke out of it, saying maybe it was ghosts singing, and we laughed it off. But the sound stuck with me. It wasn't singing. It was too deliberate, too patterned. Eventually the sun dropped low, and the sky shifted from orange to deep purple. We realized we had stayed longer than we should have and needed to get home. Instead of taking the main road, Sam suggested one of his shortcuts, a trail through the woods that would cut the distance nearly in half. We walked our bikes along the trail, talking as usual. But the chanting came again, louder this time. We both froze. Sam's face went pale. "That's close," he whispered. The sound was definitely human. Dozens of voices rising and falling together, like some kind of ritual. Sam stopped, listening carefully, and then pointed through the trees. "It's coming from that old church." The old abandoned church. I'd heard him talk about it before. The building had been abandoned for years. No services, no upkeep, just a rotting wooden frame with broken windows and a caved-in roof in parts. Nobody in town ever went there, at least not during the day. Kids would sometimes dare each other to get close, but it was treated as one of those forgotten places. Yet now, as the evening darkened around us, there were voices inside, chanting. I wanted to turn around right then and there, but Sam was curious. "Come on," he whispered. "We'll just check it out real quick. If it's nothing, we go home." Reluctantly, I followed. We hid our bikes in the grass and crept toward the church. As we got closer, the sound was undeniable. It was chanting. almost rehearsed. It made my skin crawl. We found a broken window near the back and crept up to it. Sam put his finger to his lips and leaned close to the hole in the glass. I hesitated before peeking in beside him, but just as I leaned forward, the chanting stopped. Dead silence. For a few seconds, all I could hear was my own heartbeat. Then, faintly, whispering, like several people trying to stay quiet all at once. A few shushes, then a single, distinct voice, low but clear enough to hear. Go and check. Sam and I locked eyes. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. We bolted. We backed away from the window as quietly as we could, but by the time we reached our bikes, we were already running. We grabbed them, half pushed, half rode until we hit the main road, and then we pedaled as hard as we could. I don't know if anyone actually came out of that church. I never turned around to find out. The only thing I remember is the raw terror that someone might be chasing us. By the time we made it back to our street, both of us collapsed on my front lawn, gasping for air. Finally, Sam said, "We didn't see anything. We don't talk about it." I agreed. That night, I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment we heard that whisper. Who were they? What were they doing in that church? And what would have happened if we'd been caught peeking inside? The next morning, Sam and I stayed close to home. My mom even asked us why we weren't off exploring as usual. We just shrugged and said we were tired. We never told our parents about what happened. Not then, not ever. We didn't even tell other kids. We knew how small towns worked. Word would get around, and eventually it would reach whoever was inside that church. Neither of us wanted that, so we avoided that side of town completely. We stopped taking shortcuts near the valley. We even made an unspoken rule to never mention it again. A year later, my dad was transferred again, and we moved to another city. Sam and his family stayed behind for a while longer, but eventually moved away too. Despite that, we kept in touch and remain best friends to this day. We both grew up, got married, had kids of our own. From what I've heard, that old church and the abandoned buildings around it were demolished years later when the town started expanding toward the valley. Maybe that erased whatever was going on in there, or maybe it just drove it somewhere else. All I know is that we were there that night, and we heard what we heard. I've lived a full life since then, but even now, as a grown man, I can't shake the thought of how close Sam and I might have been to something terrible. If we hadn't run when we did, I don't know what would have happened, and maybe it's better that way.